Windows 10 will be offered as a desktop as a service. And even though this isn't an official announcement, this is pretty much like, well, I don't know if you could call it a rumor, but essentially this is Microsoft's plan for the future of Windows. And so instead of actually owning Windows, you won't actually own it. You're pretty much going to rent it, so to speak. And you're going to have to pay, I assume, a monthly fee or however it will be. So it's kind of like the Adobe products. You know, instead of paying one time and having your products having what you paid for, you know, you're not actually going to own them. Instead, you're going to just rent them, pretty much. And so once you stop paying, once you stop your subscription, well, they're no longer yours. And pretty much the same thing is happening with Windows right now. And I don't know if this already happened or if it's about to happen as well, but I remember hearing somewhere about the what were they called, the Microsoft Office bundle, about instead of paying once to have the programs, you're going to have to rent them, pay monthly or yearly or whatever it was. So of course, as most people would think, this is a scam, this is completely unnecessary, and I agree, I completely agree. As if your data hasn't been exposed enough. Things are about to get worse, and with the release of Windows 10, things have been only getting worse because they're trying to take more and more control over your system. And I mean, some people don't mind when they're like, whatever, they can see whatever files I have on my computer, whatever. People don't really care about that, but I'm sure people will start to care once they have to start paying a monthly fee in order to use Windows. And as if Windows isn't expensive enough, what does it go for, like $90 or something, depending on the edition? Yeah, I think the Home Edition itself was like $90, which is crazy, but this news, this is really interesting, and it's obviously not going to take into effect right away. It's not like they're going to apply these changes within a couple weeks or months. I think that they're going to start off with certain devices. I read somewhere that they're going to start off with I forgot which devices exactly. I think the touch devices or something like that, but they're going to start off testing it on certain devices, and then they'll slowly move their way up onto the desktop PCs. And if they force this upon the users, which they most likely will, then everyone who's already on Windows, essentially they're either going to have to pay or they're just going to have to move on to something else. Some people may consider moving to older versions of Windows, like Windows 7, maybe even XP, but if it's for like casual users, as in people who don't really require much, I'm assuming this would work, because at least for a while, because they won't really need to use the computer for anything serious. But with the support, the extended support ending for in like, I think next year it is, Windows 7's extended support will end as well. So with the support ending and with all these programs and whatnot having having these types of requirements and whatnot, like compatibility issues, that's not really going to be the best option for many people. And so what does this mean? Well, I think for Linux this is a good thing, because a lot of people will stray away from this, and a lot of people will, even if they don't exactly decide to switch to Linux, at least it's going to make them consider Linux. also Mac. But looking at Apple's decisions in recent years, a lot of fans have been turning away from Apple as well. So, I think a lot of people will definitely start to give a look at Linux and give Linux a try. Of course, a lot of people will still remain loyal to Windows because, well, some people just kind of have to use Windows, or at least some people are just so used to Windows or used to things working, so they don't really want to try out or learn Linux. There's still going to be people who will stick to it, but the good thing is that it will definitely give some room for Linux, because people will be most certainly giving a look at it, and it's going to definitely Linux will gain in popularity, and also the users will most likely increase eventually. It's not like this is going to happen right away, but eventually things will change. I do think a lot of people will. I mean, it also depends on the price, especially if it's too expensive. A lot of people just won't tolerate that, and they'll just decide to go on to Linux or whatever. So I think it's good news in terms of that, but it's also bad news in terms of people who kind of have to use Windows, whether it's for their career or whatever. It really does suck, because they at that point will be forced to pay this, and also, let's not even really go into the privacy and whatnot. I mean, that's kind of redundant, to keep talking about that anyway. But you know how it goes with Windows in that regard, in that topic. So yeah. But the reason why, I'm not so sure, 100% why they decided to make this decision. Their reasoning is in terms of updates, because they do release 2 major updates a year, and with the recent update, it wasn't so well perceived, and they have been having a lot of bugs and whatnot. So this is pretty much their solution to updates. They're pretty much going to update everything for you, and more consistently, more often, so that you have a more stable and smooth experience. I mean, it's good, right? It's good to have a smooth and stable experience when you're on your computer, but does that really justify taking someone's right to, own the system themselves? I mean, does it really justify making people, having to rent Windows instead of actually, keeping and, what they paid for? So I don't think that's the main reason. It's their way to justify what they're doing. And a lot of people, I know for sure that a lot of people will be like, oh, this is great. I'll pay however much I have to, as long as my system is stable and secure. There's always going to be people like that. But it's really, in my opinion, a way to kind of trick people into agreeing with this decision. But in my opinion, even though this might not be as impactful as I think it is, because I'm not really sure how impactful it truly is, but piracy is definitely a thing, and especially a lot of people in certain places, all around the world, right? They would rather just pirate Windows than buying it, and I mean, considering Windows 10, that it's $90 or however much, some people, they don't want to pay that price, and so they just decide to pirate it instead. And even though the Windows 10 ISO is free on its own, the product key is pretty much what you're actually paying for when you're buying Windows. And so a lot of people can just go and use programs to activate their Windows, or just get random keys or whatever, so activation keys. So like I think that maybe this is also a way to fend off pirates because if Windows is the way it is right now, people can just activate it and pretend that they actually bought it, or what they can do is they can just decide not to activate it and continue with the annoying pop-ups or whatever happens, when you don't activate Windows. The fact that you can't customize it, all that kind of stuff. Um, but like this way, even if people get the product key and all that type of stuff, they're still going to have to pay. You either pay and use the product or you don't. So but maybe even then people might still find a way to get through with that. But I don't know. This seems like a different type of scale of things. I feel like this isn't something that can just easily have a workaround. So yeah, I mean, this is it's just their plan, what they plan on doing for the future. Things might change. They might not end up going through with it. It all depends on the users, if they voice their opinions. Even then, I don't know if that's going to make much of a difference, but all I know is that when it comes to Linux, it's good, but when it comes to actual Windows users, well, it's going to suck, isn't it? But yeah, so that was pretty much it. If you have any ideas or thoughts about this video or just really the topic itself, it would be pretty interesting to read what you guys think. So yeah, that was pretty much it. Thanks for watching and have a good one.